Oh, welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Welcome in. Bienvenidos a todos. Welcome. It is a beautiful, a wonderful Wednesday afternoon. I had somebody on one of the live streams the other day. Was that Monday? It was Monday we did a show in the afternoon, and then we had the draft lottery show Monday night. And somebody kind of made the joke that, while this is advertised as an 8:30 a.m. show, and I continue to kind of flirt with the idea of moving it permanently into like the midday or the afternoons, somebody threw out the idea that like the thing with the show is it's just kind of like a wonderful like little surprise that pops up on YouTube or on X or on Facebook. And you just have to have the notifications turned on. And whenever the show goes live, you just rock and roll with it. You roll with the punches. You have a blast. The whole goal here is to bring a little bit of joy to your day. We're doing it later than normal today. And I will tell you that today is probably going to be a very tightly run ship around here. We got to get in and get out and get on with life because we're not that far away from the children returning home, at which point this place turns into a zoo. It's also my daughter's birthday, so happy birthday to her. She's not going to watch the show because she's very little, and this show would not be necessarily appropriate for a 5-year-old child to watch because sometimes I get a little bit animated and the profanity comes out, but happy birthday to her. My wife's birthday was yesterday. Happy birthday to her. She will watch the show or listen to it. I hope. I cross my fingers for the support of my wife. But her birthday was yesterday. A lot of fun. A lot of good stuff going on in this house. And I will tell you that next week, if you are all about consistency, we're going to figure out pretty soon if it's going to happen or not because, there are two reasons. I'm not going to be in Pennsylvania next week. I have a work convention I have to go to, which means Russ is in a plane on Monday and on Friday. I don't hate driving. I really don't, flying. I like driving. Flying, I have a very love-hate relationship with. I always have. I probably always will. As a little kid, no fear of flying. My mom never had me afraid of flying. A certain thing that happened in 2001 maybe rattled my confidence in flying a little bit. But overall, the actual taking off, the flight, the turbulence, the landing, my mom always kept she always kept the levity with flying. And so it was always okay. But my wife, for whatever reason, love her. She is a saint. She is the best person in this house. Flying with her is the most stressful thing I have ever been through. And I live in a home with 4 small children. We flew for our anniversary last year to Houston. She white-knuckled both armrests the entire way and now has me to a place where, I get nervous on flights where I never used to. And, I had to fly to Vegas last fall and, I was kind of white-knuckling. Now, in fairness, I'm going to tell you a real quick story and then we're going to get into the show. So last year, I don't even remember if I told this on the show or not, and if you're afraid of flying or you're flying anytime soon, you might just want to mute this for the next, 60 to 90 seconds. We're in Vegas. I'm in Vegas, getting done a work conference. Everybody gets on the plane, and then they come over and they do the whole thing where it's like, we need 25 people to get off the flight. I'm like, oh, why 25 people? And so then I am a nervous Nelly, I guess, and I'm a little bit of a pestering Paulie. And so I say to the flight attendant, what's going on? She says, well, we need 25 people to get off the flight. And they start with the low level, $300 voucher, $400 voucher, whatever. But I remember reading before this flight that if you get offered a voucher, there are certain limits and all this. And I'm like, I don't get to fly for fun, so it probably won't apply to me anyway. And I say, all right, why do 25 people need to be off the plane? And finally, the flight attendant looks at me and goes, well, you know how it's hot out? And I said, yes, I have noticed that Vegas is very hot. She's like, if we don't get 25 people off with their bags, we're not air safe. I'm like, all right, what does that mean? She goes, it means that there's a mountain at the end of the runway. There's a mountain that we have to clear, and if we don't get enough people off the flight, we can't clear that mountain. At that point, I decided I shouldn't have asked the question. I really shouldn't have asked why people have to get off the plane. I should have just said, okay, that sounds great. But yeah, the idea of not clearing a mountain wasn't great. And then because it was so hot in the plane, they were like, you have to put the shades down. I'm like, no. I'd like to see the shade be open so I know if we clear the mountain or not. So I was white knuckling both armrests for a solid 45 minutes, hoping that either we cleared the mountain or if we hadn't and we had actually died and I was still feeling being on the plane, that it was just the worst version of purgatory I could ever envision. all of that is to say, I think that the flight to and from Florida is going to be fine next week. And so I'm going to try really to just go into it with an open heart and open mind. I'm going to go to La Colombe in the airport. I'm going to get a coffee. I will probably go to a bar and have at least one drink to take the edge off because I just can't envision getting on a plane. And that flight home from Vegas was very turbulent. It was not my favorite flight I've ever been a part of. But I think the one to Florida is going to be okay. So I'm going to stay positive. Now, anyway, I bring all this up because next week, one of two things is going to happen. On Monday's show, we're either going to do a morning show like we always used to, and I'll just do it from the comfort of the home studio. There's a possibility that I will pre-record a few episodes with guests to keep you entertained, even though we won't be able to go back and forth live as much as I'd like to and bring up on the screen and everything. There's a possibility that if I do a pre-recorded show and it goes live and you're in the comments, that I'll be able to like sneak in between meetings and maybe drop in the comments or something, or I'll schedule the show to go out at a time where I don't have a meeting and I'll pop in an AirPod and I'll watch the show along with you in the comments. There is also a possibility that I figure out a way to get my recording equipment in one of my two very small bags, my backpack or carry-on, and I take the recording stuff with me. And yeah, it's gonna be a hit or miss time, and who knows? Maybe I'll have a nice view from the hotel room. We'll have some nice water behind. Or maybe I'll take the recording equipment and use my phone as a hotspot and we'll do a show from a beach or something. Probably not, but maybe. You just never know. So next week is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be chaotic, but it should be fun. Now, all of that is just your programming note, and I'll probably reiterate that on Friday. I didn't mean to do that all today, but here we are. Now, what are we going to talk about today? Well, if you happen to look at the thumbnail of the episode or the description, you'll see a few quick points. And like I said, we're going to be in and out shorter than normal on the show. But I do want to go out to the comments here really quickly because I love and appreciate all the people over on YouTube, Facebook, and X. And by the way, we've now cleared 1,000 subscribers very comfortably. I believe when I woke up this morning, I saw 1,040 subscribers. We are just climbing. We're just going up here on the good old YouTube. If you haven't done so already, like the video, share the video, subscribe. Liking the video, by the way, really apparently helps in the algorithm. They love to see that not only are you watching the show, but that you are actively liking the show. So, our dear friend Ford says that this is not a great time. In fairness, we never go this late. Almost never. Sometimes we have an afternoon show that runs over into this time. I don't like the 3 o'clock and later time frame. I could tell you that for sure. I like the noonish, maybe like 1-ish, 2-ish, but not 3. Yukon456 says, I'm watching on X and YouTube. Do I get a cookie? You get 2 cookies. They're virtual cookies, and they don't really count, but you get 2 cookies from me of your choice. Ford will make sure to hook you up. Ford says, I am here. Kid's almost here, too. One of them already is. Ford, all the best to you as the children arrive at home. Amadeo, video guy Amadeo, who has been doing yeoman's work on the channel, says, oh, the back-to-back birthdays. It's great. Ford had 2 birthdays in his house last month. Jim Cochran says, I finally made an afternoon show. I feel blessed today. You feel blessed. I'll tell you something. I saw one of the most ridiculous things. I'm like hesitant to bring it up because I'm going to be honest. I had no idea that this was a thing. This is what happens when you stop teaching high school. I am so removed from having any idea about like what any slang means that like I thought something meant something a lot worse, and then I saw a clip going around. So I'm actually going to throw out to this clip because Jim said blessed. I learned that apparently raw dogging has a different meaning from what I'm accustomed to raw dogging meaning, and I guess now it's a generational gap between the millennials and Gen Z. But I'm going to throw out to this really quickly. Now, I will alert you that the video I'm going to throw to is not one you would expect with the term raw dogging to be thrown around. However, CBS is the one who actually used it. CBS is the one who threw the term out there. So really quickly, this is one of those, I never expected to hear this on network TV. And just wait until you see the context around a reporter or the host or whoever, the anchor, using the term raw dogging. So they were talking about the conclave. And let's just hear what they had to say.
That clergy have, or praying a rosary, or doing, the one thing we know they're not doing is checking Instagram because their devices have all been confiscated.
I believe the kids call it raw dogging it if you're going to go through a long period of time with no electronic device.
Yeah. Oh, right. Well, they're of a certain age, so they might be used to.
Okay, so I got to be honest with you. We're not going to talk necessarily about what the what raw dogging has typically meant traditionally, or at least to people up until the millennials. But apparently Gen Z uses it for something different. And apparently it's been mainstream because I actually did Google it. I was like, I'm like, please tell me that an anchor just totally screwed this up. And well, apparently raw dogging has different meaning now. And it's actually fitting. I was talking about flights before because apparently with the young people, with the youths, they use that term to talk about going through an entire flight, an entire trip, without any food, any water, your phone, any kind of entertainment. You're just sitting there experiencing the flight with nothing, including no food, no drink. But I heard it and I saw it going around Twitter, and then I was like, I don't think I like this. I don't like the way that this was used. It made me feel really uncomfortable. So anyway, there you go. Yeah. Yukon 456 is also just like, yeah. Amadeo says, 100% out of context. Gonna clip it. Ford, you did hear raw dog. What a mess. What a mess. Okay. Now, I do want to go to some really good points, and I see people freaking out about flights from before. Yukon saying, if humans were meant to fly, we'd be born with wings. And Amadeo saying, fuck turbulence. I almost had a panic attack every time. And Jamie is also here. And anyway, I want to get to a few of the actual points from the description of the episode today. The first one is actually really important if you're a Philadelphia sports fan, and if you're an Eagles fan, and if you've been paying attention to this show. We have been kind of covering. Now, we got away from it the last week or two because as much as I love talking about the Eagles, there is a certain amount of time that I think you're allowed to go without talking about the Birds. And I am not subject to the Nielsen ratings here, so I don't have anybody breathing down my neck to talk about the Birds all the time. But the word did get around going into the draft that the Eagles and Dallas Goedert weren't entirely aligned on the contract that he had going into next year, and it felt like there was a potential divorce coming between Dallas Goedert and the Eagles, and that there were teams that were interested in potentially trading for him, and we heard around the draft that those talks could escalate and all that. And then this morning we woke up to the news that Dallas Goedert has actually restructured his contract. So I'll throw it out to Mike Garafolo. Garafolo says the Eagles and tight end Dallas Goedert have agreed to a reworked deal for this season. As Jeff McClain stated, the team had trade offers for Goedert during the draft. He was in the loop, decided to remain with the team, and selflessly restructure, trying to run it back. Now, this is interesting on a few levels, right? Because this doesn't say that he reworked his deal and that he signed a multi-year extension. This just says for this year, he and the team agreed to restructure the deal. Now, why does that matter to the Eagles? Well, one, it brings back one of their most valuable weapons, and it brings back a guy into the fold that I think they would have significantly missed. And while we went into the draft and said, all right, maybe they'll try to address the tight end position, and they certainly could use some help, I think that we all had to be kind of fair about this going into the draft, that Goedert was going to remain your number one option. And if there was a way to restructure his contract and bring him back, that is still ultimately the way that you go if you're trying to keep that window of contention open. And I keep saying, and I will continue to say, I do think that despite a number of exits, especially on the defensive side of the ball, I still think that the Eagles are very much in not just championship contending window, but I look at the next 5 years as being, you have the potential to have a dynasty of your very own. You have the chance to win another title or two in the next 5 years, as long as you can keep enough of this core together. And so, if we kind of remove ourselves when we look back at the draft, and really the biggest acquisition in this draft was Jahad Campbell, and there's that belief that maybe he'll play the edge when Nakobe Dean is back. Maybe he will be lined up alongside Zach Bond, and that gives you flexibility with Dean. They had departures on the defensive side of the ball. There's no getting around it, and there are going to be guys like Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell that are going to have to prove that they are more than ready and able to prove that their rookie years were not just a flash in the pan, that they are going to remain those high-level contributors this year. But if you look at it and you kind of zoom out, the Eagles didn't really have a replacement ready for Dallas Goedert. This isn't like when you had Brent Selleck and Zach Ertz was in the wings. This isn't like when you had Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert was in the wings. You really don't have a guy that you say, all right, this is 100% going to be the top option at tight end. Calcaterra had some really big catches last year, but I don't think there's anybody who like sits back and says, oh yeah, we're good to move on from Dallas Goedert now because Calcaterra is going to be the guy. So all of that is to say, Howie Roseman did what Howie Roseman has become incredible at, which is convincing players to restructure their deal. Now, we know that restructuring typically means that there could be dead money on the cap further down the line. But once again, you only have a finite number of years as a GM. You only have a finite number of years when it comes to contending for a championship. And we see this each and every season. We see this with every team that wins a Super Bowl. Whoever is able to maintain as much of that core as possible, those are the teams that keep themselves in contention for a dynasty. Those are the teams that prevent or that don't fall into the one and done scenario. And this Eagles team should be good enough to be able to contend long term. And I will once again point to the defensive side of the ball. There's a ton of youth, but youth that has performed. And now you look at the offensive side of the ball and you know that Devontae Smith is under contract, A.J. Brown is under contract. Your offensive line, for the most part, is largely under contract. The only real variable there is Lane Johnson. You know, how many years does he have left? Is he going to want to just keep doing one-year deals? You have that piece. You have Saquon Barkley, who you've locked up even longer term. Jalen Hurts locked up long term. You have consistency on the offensive side of the ball, and you have a ton of youth on the defensive side of the ball. You should theoretically be able to continue to contend. I was worried about what would happen if the Eagles moved on from Goedert. I still think there is a ton of value in the player. Now, what does this mean beyond the upcoming season? That is what's up for debate. If Dallas Goedert goes out and kills it this year, let's say the Eagles make it back to a Super Bowl. Maybe they even win another Super Bowl. Is Dallas Goedert going to be willing to take less money to continue running it back and try to build that dynasty? I don't know, but here's the thing that I do know. Too often as fans, there's this belief that like guys should take the hometown discount. And we're seeing it, in fairness, over on the Phillies side of things with Kyle Schwarber, right? A lot of people saying, well, Kyle Schwarber should be willing to take a hometown discount to keep the team together. Kyle Schwarber should value winning enough that he's going to be willing to take potentially less money than he would get on the free agent market to keep this thing going with the Phillies. I disagree with that. I don't think he should be willing to, especially at his age. Goddard's a little bit different age-wise, and I think Goddard's in a different place when it comes to just like what he's accomplished in this league. I think the Eagles had a little bit of leverage, and it all depends on like which teams came inquiring. Like, for example, if Kansas City came to you before the draft and said, we're willing to part with like a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick because they want the heir apparent to Travis Kelce, I would assume that Dallas Goedert would say, all right, like, I might be interested in that. And then Howie has to decide if the compensation's enough. But like, if it was Jacksonville, if it was Vegas, if it was Cleveland, it was one of those teams, of the Jets, even the Steelers, who are still unsettled at quarterback, I don't think Dallas Goedert does that. I don't think Dallas Goedert uproots himself over some money this season. I think that he knows that as long as he restructures and stays healthy and performs the way that we would expect him to perform, he's lining himself up for a really big payday on the next contract. And maybe that's what ultimately happens here. Maybe this is a calculated risk on the part of the team and the player, because make no mistake about it, even if the Eagles acknowledge that Goedert might not remain here beyond next season, there is going to be public outcry if Goedert goes out and performs at a high level again this year and then moves on after the season. So there is a risk on both sides. If you're the Eagles, it almost would have made sense, if you think that he's going to leave no matter what, for them to trade him around the draft and say, look, we were just never going to be able to come to financial terms, and we wish him the best, and he got paid by the new team, yada, yada, yada. This is like one of those times where you sit back and you say it's a good deal for the player and it's a good deal for the team. And all of that is to say, we also don't know what the restructured deal looks like right now. We don't know how much cap money was saved, but we can probably assume that it's enough that if the Eagles need to tweak this roster between now and training camp, they'll be able to do it. So it's a win-win. And it's a win-win if you're a fan, because ultimately your franchise quarterback, Jalen Hurts, now has one of his favorite options and one of his favorite targets, and the guy who's supposed to be the safety blanket on the offense, they have him for at least another year And hopefully it was an amicable decision for him to remain here, and that he's going to remain happy, and that he's going to know he's lining himself up for a big payday next year. All right, I'm going to go out to the comments really quick, and then we're going to keep moving on. We're going to move along like the All-American Rejects. I'm not singing that right now. You don't want that. I don't want that. But we are going to get to, there are a couple of hockey points, and there's some other things that I want to try to rush to here really quickly. Okay. Let's see. Zach O says, Russ, please tell me we aren't going to draft the most Flyers prospect ever in Brady Martin with one of Denoye, O'Brien, or Frondel still on the board. I can feel it coming. I'll get you there in a second. Chris Freed asks, who are the leaders on the defense, though, for the Eagles? I don't know. That is the part that is very much up in the air. You would assume that Zach Bond is one of the leaders. Could they bring in another veteran presence, somebody who's going to be like very far down on the depth chart and kind of fill a role that like Avonte Maddox did, or that James Bradbury did on the last team? Maybe. They have young guys who have been here long enough. Like you don't have let's call it a Brian Dawkins or a Ray Lewis, a long tenured player on this defense. Now, could Brandon Graham come in as not a player, but more as a coach who's been in that locker room, and it's kind of like the intermediary, is kind of like the liaison between the players and the coaching staff, and is still there, not far removed from winning his second Super Bowl in the franchise's history. Maybe you look at that, but there's nobody that I like. There's nobody that I look at and say, oh, that's the bona fide leader on the defense. I would assume that in that locker room, you would think that like can Reed Blankenship be that guy? Is Zach Bond that guy? Are those two together those guys? Maybe. Bryce Huff? No. Let's see. I mentioned Schwarber before. Ford says Schwarber doesn't have to do anything. Fans love saying that, but it's not their money or their lives. Correct. STT Sports Network says 10 of 11 starters returning on offense after winning a Super Bowl is not talked about enough. The only guy who left was Mekhi Becton. I still want to know what happened with Mekhi Becton, because I liked Mekhi Becton a lot. I thought he was going to come back, and he didn't get the bag from the Chargers. And so I don't know what to make of that deal, and it honestly kind of bums me out that he's gone, because the idea of like rolling back or running back the same offensive line, and then you would have had all 11 starters back on offense, like that would have been pretty badass. Whatever. STT also says Zach Bond will step up in a leadership role this season on D. I think that's probably correct. Okay. Here is where I want to go next. Now, I will point out the fact that I kind of reacted to this news already, and it is tied to the hockey team and the basketball team in town. But when I say that I was the one who reacted to it, I'm kind of telling you the truth, but I'm also slightly not telling you the truth, because it was me, but was it me? If you follow me on Twitter, you'll have an idea of what I'm talking about. So for those who missed it, the big news on Tuesday was that the Wells Fargo Center, come this September, will no longer be the Wells Fargo Center. It will instead be the Xfinity Mobile Arena. And so I said to myself, me reacting to it might not be that interesting, but I can think of somebody who it might be interesting to hear from. And so we're going to go there now. My fellow Philadelphians, we have a brand new arena in South Philadelphia. The former Wells Fargo Center, also the Wachovia Center, and the FU Center. We loved saying FU, didn't we, folks? It was a great time. But the Wells Fargo Center, it's now the Xfinity Mobile Arena, and it's a lot of words, folks. We don't know. What are we going to call it? Are we going to call it the Xfinity Mobile Arena? I think it's too many words. So we have to decide, what are we going to call it? Is it going to be the XMA? Are we going to call it the XM Arena? Are we going to call it the X? And we love X, don't we, folks? We love Elon. He's done a great job with Doge, and he's going to Doge the South Philadelphia Sports Complex. I've been told the new arena they're trying to build, Elon is running it. And in fact, if this is now the X Arena, does that mean that Elon owns the Flyers and owns the Sixers as well? And perhaps a WNBA team to be named later, and will also run all of the concerts? We don't know, folks. We don't know, but Sixers does have an X in it as well, so it makes sense. Elon is going to do a great job running the Xfinity Mobile Arena. It's a great place to go watch a game from time to time. And since it is a mobile arena, we assume there are going to be wheels underneath. So if the Sixers or the Flyers or some other team wins a championship, we can put it up on the wheels, folks. We could take it right down Broad Street to City Hall or to wherever we want. We could go down to Avalon, maybe to Brigantine, Cape May. We could even take it all the way down to Mar-a-Lago. Now, in fairness, there were a lot of people, they said, we need to name it the Wawa Center. We love Wawa. We love Wawa, don't we, folks? Of course we do. My friend Bobby Kennedy, he said, you need Wawa. You need Wawa pretty much every day. If you don't have enough Wawa, you have horrible health things happen, including but not limited to death. So it's not the Wawa Center. It's not the Yards Brewing Center. It's not the Yingling Center. We love Yingling, don't we, folks? We love Dick Yingling. Great guy, Coal Region. Opened a plant in Florida, and we love Dick Yingling, but it's not the Yingling Center. It's not the Wawa Center. It is the X, and we wish Elon the very best with this brand new venture, the Xfinity Mobile Arena. What do you think, folks? Do we like the name? I think we love the name. We love the name, don't we, folks? We love the name. Let me know. What do you think? Do we like the name? I think the name is a great name. I think there's never been an arena in this city with a name better than the Xfinity Mobile Arena. Believe me. Believe me. So, yeah. I do have a question, though. So I thought about it since yesterday, and I said to myself, is the X a good name? And I think it is. I proposed the X on Twitter as soon as I saw the news. A lot of people jumped on the X as if it was, their idea. It was clearly me. I will take all royalties and residuals for the naming of the X. I think the X is actually a great name for the arena. Wells Fargo Center never had a good name. Dub FC or WFC never sounded good. I don't know anybody who called it that. The Farg sounded stupid. The Center, like the Sixers called it because they weren't getting money from Wells Fargo Center, that also seemed stupid. I was a little bit surprised that they got rid of Center and that they went with Arena. But the Xfinity Mobile Arena, I don't hate it. Now, Xfinity Mobile, I see the commercials. Do I know anybody who has Xfinity Mobile? But the X, I can see calling it the X. I think it's going to be good. I like the idea of the X. Now, are the teams inside of the building going to be any better? Because I have to tell you that if the biggest development is the renaming of the arena, and you might have seen it on the thing there, and I could also pull up the video announcement that went around Twitter, but like they also showed that this is going to have beautiful purple lights that I guess they're going to do the mood lighting. Now, in fairness, they've had the mood lighting on the building for, I believe, well over a year as part of the renovation. But we'll throw it over here really quickly. In case you missed it, they're planning on it, looks like, the Xfinity Mobile Arena is going to be purple. Now, I assume that on game days, the Flyers are going to light it up orange, and that when the Sixers are playing, it's going to be red, white, and blue. But when there's concerts going on, I would assume that it's going to be this purple. And listen, the final thing that they showed with Xfinity Mobile Arena lit up on top, I don't know if they're going to do that or not, but I will say the purple is pretty damn sleek. Now, I bring up, will the teams be better? Because, like, in fairness, I want to imagine that part of the reason that the Flyers and the Sixers have been largely dog shit for a decade is because of the Wells Fargo name. I just want to imagine that it was a curse of Wells Fargo, and now that they're going in-house with Xfinity, that we're going to go to Xfinity and beyond. I want to imagine that the Flyers are going to now have a renaissance, and that the Danny Briere will begin in full this offseason, and that by next year, this Flyers team is going to take not just one step forward, but 2 steps forward. And that the Sixers will maybe now that the lottery is going to be happening next week, now that we know it's going to have a different name, maybe the shitty lottery fortune that the Flyers had to endure will not pass to the Sixers. Rather, the Sixers will somehow end up with the number 1 pick. Wouldn't it be nice to have a young Cooper Flagg to go with Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain and Paul George and Joel Embiid. But like, wouldn't it be great to just see that one little bit of positivity, just a little smidge of positivity for one of the teams that plays at this time of year? It's crazy to watch the playoffs. It's crazy to watch the Stanley Cup playoffs and see the level of team that is still playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and knowing that, like, God, imagine what it would feel like to be a Flyers fan and have a team that looks like they belong on the ice with these kind of teams. And you think about home ice advantage. Wells Fargo Center is fine, and they've put a lot of money into it, and I no longer hate the arena. I hated it for a long time. I thought it was dumpy. The renovations have been pretty freaking nice. There is nothing quite like that building when there's vitriol and something to cheer for together. Now, I will just simply point out, the Anaheim game where Cutter Gauthier came back to town, that had a playoff atmosphere. That crowd was raucous. That crowd was dangerous. The idea of being able to go back to the playoffs and having a Philadelphia playoff hockey crowd, that's the thing of beauty. That's the kind of thing that gets me excited. Now, watching the NBA playoffs, NBA playoffs have not been very good. There have been some good games. There have been some good moments, but they have been largely underwhelming compared to what we've seen in the NHL. I also point out the fact that, like, Cleveland going down 0-2 to Indiana sucks, because I think Cleveland is your best chance of stopping the Celtics if they're able to get past the Knicks. By the way, while I'm on this NBA kick, I saw Kyle Pagan wrote over on Crossing Broad that it's never been easier to cheer for the Celtics. He'd rather see the Celtics win than the Knicks. And I have to ask, am I the only person who thought that was crazy? Because I will not cheer for Boston. I will not cheer for Jason Tatum, who reminds me of Markelle Fultz. I will not cheer for Jaylen Brown. I will not cheer for Al Horford and his sister, who constantly ribbed us on Twitter because we didn't treat her family as nicely as the Boston fans did. By the way, I also won't forget the pic that had to be attached to the lifeless husk of Al Horford to send him to Oklahoma City to get off that deal, and the fact that Sam Presti, who tanked worse than Sam Hinkie ever did, was just named the Executive of the Year in one of the most hypocritical stances in the history of the National Basketball Association. I can't root for Boston. I will gladly root for the Knicks. Not because they're the Nova Knicks, but because I don't hate the New York teams as much as I hate the Boston teams. In fact, I could almost make an argument. Well, no, I don't want to see the Knicks win the title. I would be fine if the Knicks go to the NBA Finals and face one of either the Timberwolves or the Thunder. I think the team from the West will win, and I would love to watch Anthony Edwards win. I think it'd be great. I think it'd be good for the league. I think it'd be good for Minnesota. It'd be great for all of them. It'd be great for all the people who had to suffer through, and I have the guy over here, the Kevin Garnett days of the Timberwolves when he was by far their best player and they were never able to put good enough players around him. Latrell Sprewell does not count. I'd be fine with Minnesota winning. I don't hate the Knicks. I'm sure that if the Knicks played the Sixers like they did last year, I would obviously hate the Knicks. I would root against the Knicks. But when you put a New York team and a Boston team in together, I will take the New York team 10 times out of 10. You cannot get me to root for a Boston team. If it had all come down to, like, the Bruins have to win their final game for the Flyers to, like, have a better chance at the number 1 overall pick, I would have still rooted against the Bruins. That's how much I hate Boston teams. I do not like them, Sam. I am. Anyway, I'm just going to check over here really quickly to see if there's anybody who thinks that I'm also crazy. But I really thought the NBA playoffs have been largely underwhelming. Jim Cochran says that we should cancel Pagan for that take. I agree. Ford says Boston is the worst. It's not even close. Also thinks that the Wolves are going to win. Jamie wants there to be a meteor instead of watching the Knicks or the Celtics win, and I actually tend to agree that might not be the worst outcome. Chris Freed said Sprewell knew how to choke his coach. Man, I liked Kevin Garnett when he was a member of the Minnesota Timberwolves, and then he went to Boston. I didn't like him. I just can't do it. By the way, Allison says that if they're going to light up the Xfinity Mobile Arena in purple, the nickname for the arena should be the Grimace. But that then reminds us of the Mets, right? We don't want that. Chris Fried says the Flyers have sucked for 20 years. The Sixers have sucked for 40. There have been like a couple of outlier seasons, but largely not ideal. Chris Fried asks, are you hosting a special NBA lottery episode like you did for hockey next Monday? No, because I think the draft lottery, is that on Monday? I have a dinner plan thing down at where I'm going for work on Monday. So if it is on Monday, and I'm pretty sure that it is, there will not be a live show during the draft lottery unless something really chaotic. Yeah, it's going to be on Monday. What time? How far away is the restaurant? I know what time the reservation's at. Am I crazy enough to try to sneak in a live show reacting to the draft lottery right before I'm supposed to rush off to dinner? I'm crazy. I don't know if I'm that crazy. I doubt that we'll do a live show on Monday, like for the draft lottery. I'll have to like react to it, I guess, on Wednesday's show or whatever. Unless I do like I don't know, we'll figure it out. Video guy Amadeo is going to be the one who's going to have to deal with it, okay? He says you might get smacked by the missus. No. This is a work trip. The missus does not go on the work trip. She does not. So she's not the one that would smack me. It'd be, my boss, who would not smack me. Great guy, would not smack me. There's no chance. No smacking. All right. That's not the last thing. There's one other thing that I wanted to get to on the show today. And it's twofold because it has to do with the same team. And it could, in some way, shape, or form, impact your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers. Now, first, if you missed this, okay, I'm just going to go to the part that really matters. And we're going to take the sound off here. It got announced today, officially, that there is a new brand for one of the National Hockey League teams. It is one that I think a lot of people thought was ultimately going to be the winner. And that, of course, is that Utah will no longer be the Utah Hockey Club. They finally have a brand. And that brand is the Utah Mammoth. Now, they're not the Utah Mammoths. They are the Utah Mammoth. And then you can see the branding here. I think the branding's actually pretty nice. I like the color scheme. I like the alternate logo that has the Utah state lines. You have salt white, mountain blue. I forget what they used for the black color. They added an adjective to it. But if you look at the logo, it's got the mammoth, and it also has the mountains on the left side. So it's a mountain range, and you got the mammoth coming out of it. Now, there is part of me that feels like, oh, that looks like it was an AI-generated logo. But I have to tell you, it's a sharp enough logo, and it almost makes me jealous. So they have, tusks up. Now, I'm not saying that the Flyers have bad branding. They don't. Now, what is a Flyer? No one actually knows. And I think that the orange and black is a good color scheme, and it's sleek. Now, there are other teams in the NHL that I think have really, really shitty branding. And, there are some that I think should absolutely go back to, retro stuff. You can never convince me that Vancouver should not go back to the Flying V jersey. It is so hideous and majestic at the same time. There are teams that I think are better off going back. I think the Sabres going back to the retro jerseys, with the actual buffalo head on them and the red and black and that color scheme would be great. Or keep the current color scheme, which is actually pretty nice, and just go back to the idea of having the buffalo on the jersey, going that way. Maybe fuse the two together. But the Utah Mammoth is okay. I still think it's weird that it's a singular noun and not a plural one. Chris said something here that is going to upset some people. And now, in fairness, we do not endorse the thoughts of Chris Fried on YouTube. He asks, in Utah, is Utah keeping the bring your wives and your ticket half price promo? We don't know for sure that there was a promo like that, Chris. And that is probably somewhat offensive to somebody out there. I don't know if it's anybody in the comments here. But Chris, I think that you should educate yourself on the differences between the Book of Mormon and the Mormon doctrine, which I forget the name of. Why do I know that there's a separate thing? Because my economics teacher in high school, government and econ teacher, who we're just not going to talk a whole lot about some of the allegations over the years. But this teacher said, if somebody will read the Book of Mormon, they'll get extra credit. And I said, I guess I'll read the Book of Mormon for extra credit. Now, I don't even know if he was a Mormon. I don't think he was. But I read the book. Well, I read part of the Book of Mormon, then I read Cliff Notes, and I reported on it. But I did learn that there are very specific differences and takes on polygamy, for example, for Chris Fried, in the Book of Mormon versus whatever. I forget what the name of the doctrine is. You can look it up. You can Google it. I'm not going to Google it right now. But anyway, That's the little side rant for Chris Fried. Don't be close-minded to the fine folks of Utah. I hear they're great people. Anyway, Jamie likes the color choices. I agree. Chris says, cool logo for Utah. Can't wait for the Sabres versus Mammoth Cup finals. You're going to be waiting a long time. A long time. Amadeo says, we need a team wearing purple in the NHL. Phoenix's jerseys weren't purple. The Coyotes had that, throwback logo of the Coyote, as a little person thing. And that wasn't really purple, though. That's a good point. There aren't any. I mean, the Kings could kind of do a purple thing, but then it looks more like the Sacramento Kings than the LA Kings. Do we have another team that could kind of get away with it? I don't know. Jim asks, didn't they wear purple? They might have at some point, but I think that's where you don't want it to do the confusion. It's not like a real brand confusion. They both play in California, but I don't know. Yukon says the singular just sounds like they're saying we are big instead of referencing the creature. We are mammoth. That's also not what a Mormon sounds like. It's also not what somebody who would have seen a mammoth would have sounded like. You're screwing this up, Russ, you idiot. Yeah. We are mammoth. Yeah, it does. It kind of does. Reed DeFord says, just give me back the black early 2000 Flyers sweaters. That's all I ask for in uniforms. I keep telling people in the Flyers organization, they are missing out on so much money by not running back the old black jerseys. One of the very few hockey sweaters I have is a Peter Forsberg black Flyers sweater, and it is one of my favorites. I think it's a sleek-looking sweater. I know that there are some people who don't like them, but I think for the most part, they are the best. Okay, so we have that part of Utah. And why do I bring up Utah beside just being the mammoth? There's one other thing to kind of keep an eye on. Now, if you followed the NHL draft lottery, specifically if you were one of the many people, over 1,000 people across all platforms, who watched the show live the other night, you will know that Utah was not able to jump all the way to number 2. They won the second lottery. The most you could move up is 10 spots, and Utah moved from 14 to 4. And there have been these murmurs out there that since the lottery was instituted, no team is traded out of the top 5. There's the idea out there that perhaps Utah, who did not expect to be in the top 5, Utah might be open to trading out of number 4. Now, they're not going to go from number 4 down to number 12 or 4 to 14. But it makes things really interesting if you're a Flyers fan, because as Flyers fans know, the team has 3 first-round picks and 4 second-round picks. And if you're looking to put together a package that could be enticing, let's just say, for example, that there's a player that gets to number 4 that you didn't expect. Like Michael Meese is not going to fall to 4. Let's just say he somehow did. Or there's somebody else that you think will not be there by 6, okay? If you're the Flyers, do you go to Utah and say, listen, you can have number 6 and the Colorado pick, or 6 and the Edmonton pick, and then maybe you throw in a second as a sweetener to move up 2 spots, because you do the calculus in your brain. You go, listen, that Edmonton pick isn't going to get us a first-round pick next year. That Edmonton pick isn't going to be enough to get us to move up if, in the unlikely scenario, a Roger McQueen falls. I'm going to continue beating this drum until it happens and manifesting it. But maybe you say, that Edmonton pick isn't going to be worth as much as you think it is. And so you say, Edmonton pick plus 6 gets you up to 4. And Utah, who didn't expect to be there, is like, yeah, it's fine. We know that we're going to get one of the players that we didn't expect to get anyway. And they go, it's still a second first-round pick. And Utah could still use that additional asset. Is that something that's enticing to you as a Flyers fan? I think it should be, if the Flyers have a guy that they think will not fall to 6, but they want to sweeten the pot to move up to 4. This is where having all that draft capital could honestly come into play in a big, big way. Utah, to me, is the only team right now that I could see be willing to move. There is no chance in hell the Islanders are going to say, oh, yeah, we'll trade back from 1 to 6. That's not happening. They'll stay where they're at. And nobody else was able to move, obviously, just the way that it goes. There were only 2 people, there were only 2 teams could really move up. So you had the Islanders move up. They're not going to trade out of number 1. Utah at 4 is very, very interesting. Very interesting. Now, all that's to say, I have no idea if it'll happen. I expect that Danny Briere will work the phones and will probably try to get something figured out. And if there is a possibility to move up, he'll explore it. I keep saying this, again, manifesting it. imagine a scenario where if you're the Flyers and you can't move up to 4 and you get to number 6 and like a Frondel somehow falls. Or there's I don't know, say like an Eklund is there and you decide that that's the guy that you want to go with. Or you really do love Denoye and he ends up becoming your pick at number 6. And then you do watch a guy that you didn't expect to fall, whether it's McQueen or somebody else, and they fall to number 15 and you're the Flyers and you still have those other 2 first-round picks this year. That could get interesting. That really could. Like, will a team move out of like the 15th pick or 16th pick in exchange for 2 later first-round picks or one of those and your pick next year? Now, I've seen people throw out this idea, and I don't totally disagree. There are people who now say, if you're the Flyers, under no circumstances should you trade your first-round pick next year, even if you think you're going to be a playoff team or close to it, because let's say you just missed the playoffs and you're going to pick 15th. Well, we've now watched 2 teams in Utah and the Islanders jump up 10 spots and 9 spots or whatever. You don't necessarily want to be the team that traded away your first-round pick, and then that pick jumps, leapfrogs, and you could have gotten a really valuable player next year. So I understand the thought process behind not wanting to trade their own first-round pick next year. I'm just saying, I think that the Flyers are going to be very active, very, very active on draft day, and I think they have some young guys that they might be willing to move off of as well. Let's see. JH says that he got no alert today. I'm sorry, JH, but don't worry. Don't worry. It was a very last-minute announcement of the show, so make sure you have those notifications set on your phone for YouTube and wherever else. Let's see. JH says, watched them rig the draft lottery right in front of us for the Islanders. They pissed off with the All-Star game, and now for the new darling team in Utah. Chris Freed asks, would you give all 3 first-round picks to move from 4 to 6? If Michael Misa fell, yeah. If you're I don't think there's a generational talent in this draft. I don't know who part of my job, right? Part of what I have to do, part of what Ant is going to have to do, part of what Bunny's going to do. We have to get a better feeling for which guys they're really looking at. And if you don't think that Hagens, for example, is going to get there to 6, and you are really of the belief that Hagens is the guy that Mishkov needs to play with, and that you think they're going to be this dynamic duo for a decade, well then yeah, what's the value of those 2 later first-round picks? I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily move heaven and earth and trade every asset to go up 2 spots, but I think you certainly make them available. Or you make those 2 picks available as part of a bigger package for something, maybe a player that's actually ready to play at the NHL level. I don't know. And actually, to that point, Sutliff says, I'd rather trade the extra first-round picks for NHL players to make the team better next season, which I think is probably the more likely outcome. But I don't think that Briere and company are going to have anything ruled out going into this draft. I think they are very clearly aware of just how important this offseason is, not just for them, not just for their viability longer term, but for this organization. Let's see. Connor is also here. Connor says, big game for the brother tonight. Penridge versus Souderton for the Suburban 1 Lacrosse Championship. Hopefully the Russ Joy Show covers it. I will not be covering it, but I do wish your brother and his team the best of luck tonight in that championship. Very exciting. Amadeo says that Craig Button's mock draft scares him because he also was the one who projected Lashenko to the Flyers. I think it was a full month and a half or 2 months early. We might get into the mock draft on Friday, but Craig Button has the Flyers taking somebody who literally no one else that I've seen put out a mock draft has anywhere close to the top 6, and that could be concerning. But again, part of our job on the Snow the Goalie crew is going to be to find out what's true, what's not, find out what is factual, what is fictional. So we'll be working on that. I'm not sure if we'll have a new Snow the Goalie tomorrow or Friday. We were planning on trying to do something and do more of just a wider look at the league. I would think that if there is a day, tomorrow probably makes more sense. We do have a meeting with somebody from the Flyers on Friday. That could also be kind of important. That will not be on camera, though. We have a meeting. So we'll see how that goes as well. I think it's going to go well, but I'll let you know. Anyway, I will be back on Friday at some point. Might be in the morning, might be in the afternoon. But I will be back on Friday with the Russ Joy Show. If you haven't done so already, seriously, like the video, share the video, and subscribe on YouTube. That's important. You can ring the bell to get notified whenever the show goes live. If you are perusing YouTube Shorts or Facebook or Instagram Reels or TikTok and a video from this show pops up, do me a favor. Hit the like button. Hit the little heart. not only does it make me feel warm and fuzzy, but video guy Amadeo loves it too because he's the one who clips everything now. He does a damn good job of it. That's why he makes the big bucks. We love Amadeo. We love the work that he's doing, so hit the little heart button on that stuff. And liking the video helps people in the Philadelphia market and beyond find this show. So seriously, like the video, share the video, subscribe. And if you listen in the podcast feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts, do me a favor. If you're on Spotify, hit the little review button on the show page or the rating button, leave 5 stars. If you're on Apple Podcasts, by all means, a 5-star rating is great. A 5-star review is even better. I'll read it on the show. Even if you hate the show for whatever reason, leave 5 stars and I'll still read it. So that is it. That is what I have for today. A big thank you to everybody who joined me. I will talk to you on Friday here on the Russ Joy Show. Until then, I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. Talk to all of you on a fantastic Friday. Have a wonderful Wednesday, everybody. I will talk to you very, very soon.